Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex. I'm Dave Bryan from SteelersDepot.com, and not with me today is obviously Alex Kozora. He and three other guys from the site are down in Mobile, Alabama, covering the Senior Bowl this week. So I'm flying solo today, one of the rare times that I do that. But I do have a special guest today. Full disclosure up front, he is a Browns fan. So let's get that out of the way first and foremost. But he does a lot of great off-season or off-season draft work for the site riseindraft.com. That's RISEN draft.com. He also does writing for, let's see here, if I can pull up his Twitter feed here real quick, for the Browns Digest, the Sports Illustrated Browns Digest. You can find that online. Also NFL content for Stats Perform, and he's also an Opta analyst. He hails from Columbus, Ohio. I am talking about Cory Kinnan, first time on the show. Cory, welcome to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex. Thanks for spending time with me on this Wednesday morning.
Absolutely. I mean, there are better ways to spend my time on a Wednesday morning with a Steelers fan, but I think I can cope. I can deal with it. So.
I hear you. We'll tolerate each other here for about a half an hour or so. Cory, let's start first and foremost with before we get into kind of talking about the quarterbacks, and that's really your specialty. I think first and foremost is charting and covering these quarterbacks leading up to this 2022 NFL draft this year. Talk a little bit about the Browns 2021 season and kind of your thoughts on what they're going to do at the quarterback position with Baker Mayfield, kind of in that questionable category about what they're going to do with him with the contract and all.
Yeah, so it's definitely a massive talking point in Ohio, Northeast Ohio right now. So, it's really interesting. It's an interesting conversation to have because he hurt that shoulder the second week of the season. So, I mean, coming off how he played against the Chiefs and the Texans, coming off the back end of 2020 as well, I think there's an argument to be made that, if he shuts it down week 2, he's back this year, no question. And they might even extend him, it might have extended him based off of the body of work of those first 2 games of the year and the last 9 games of last year. But instead, he opted to play through the injury. And it doesn't take anybody, with more than one eye to notice that he didn't play well as he was playing through the injury. In fact, he played to the tune of probably bottom 5 quarterback play in the NFL this year. So now we flip the script from, okay, Baker Mayfield, he played really well the back 9 of 2020, at a really high level, first 2 games of the year against the Chiefs and the Texans. There's a lot to like. And as the season went along, it's like, oh my gosh, is this the guy? This guy has no confidence. He's mechanically broken. He's thrown off his back foot. His feet are just hyperactive when he feels pressure. He's not seeing his second reads. He can't get there. He's keeping his head down when he's trying to extend plays. Like, this is a broken quarterback now. And now we have to talk about, like, are Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, are they going to risk their job security? With an owner who has been known to be extremely volatile in terms of moving on from personnel as he feels necessary, are they going to feel confident risking, potentially job security on running it back with Baker Mayfield? And so he's definitely not getting an extension. So they're heading into the offseason with his 5th-year option still in place. But now you just have to question is that something that general manager Andrew Berry and head coach Kevin Stefanski feel comfortable with, is saying, you know what? Unless they have some sort of assurance from Jimmy Haslam, the owner, that, if they run it back with Baker Mayfield and it goes poorly again, that will have no bearing on their job security. You have to wonder, like, are they going to risk their jobs by trying to run it back with Baker? And I think that's the big question right now in Cleveland. So I think they're going to be active looking for quarterbacks. I don't know about the draft, but probably in free agency and the trade market, they're going to be active looking for quarterbacks, at least in the form of competition, because I just personally don't see how. I mean, you have a pretty talented roster. I think the Super Bowl window has been proven to kind of be open for this team, but it all hinges on the quarterback play. And I just don't know if they can waste another year of that potential window by saying, you know what, we'll run it back and see if it was the shoulder. I think it's just difficult. It's a difficult place to be.
Yeah. What do you think they just go ahead and just let him play out his option and then dangle the franchise tag in front of him and say, look, play for the tag and go from there. But in the meantime, don't mind us. We might draft a quarterback in this year's draft. Or do you think that if they make the decision to ride with him, I mean, obviously, because that fifth-year option, I think, is fully guaranteed. So they're on the hook for it right now as it is. So, I mean, it would make sense to at least he would be the week one starting quarterback, you would think, unless they do go outside and get a free agent, or is the option of maybe trading him on the table? How do you see it playing out?
So I mean, there's always ways to kind of work around that guaranteed money. You can ask teams you're trading to take on the money, which, if you look at a guy like Kirk Cousins, that's what the Vikings are going to ask. They're going to tell some team, hey, take on this money because we don't want to take it, eat it dead cap. So there's always those options. But I mean, I think they're going to turn over every stone. And it honestly wouldn't, just the way that Baker Mayfield has, spoken in the media, the way that Baker Mayfield has presented himself on social media, it honestly wouldn't even shock me for Baker Mayfield to be the first one to blink and ask out, to be completely honest. But I do think the Browns are going to be active in looking for another guy. It's just a matter of, if they don't find anything out there, if they don't, if Derek Carr's not on the trade market, if they deem Kirk Cousins as it's not a significant enough upgrade for, the $35 million price tag. If they can't find another guy, then yeah, they're going to run it back. But I think they will turn over every stone. And if they don't find a veteran, I tend to think they might take a chance on like a day 2, early day 3 quarterback, and potentially even look for a vet on the market to challenge a Teddy Bridgewater, somebody like that to come in and say, you know what, we're at least going to give you competition. But I think they'll try their best to turn over every stone. But again, going back to what I initially said, I wouldn't be shocked if Baker Mayfield at the end of the day just says, you know what, I don't want to be here anymore.
Cory, I don't know how long you've been maybe doing your charting project and all like that. Obviously, Baker's been around for numerous years now. Is he who you thought he would be, or is he, regressed and really just didn't pan out to maybe what you thought he would be at the NFL level?
Yeah, he hasn't panned out the way I thought he would be, So if we go back to his rookie season, Baker Mayfield is lighting it up down the field. He's extremely accurate down the field. He's making plays when protection breaks down. I mean, his tackles were Greg Robinson and Chris Hubbard his first 2 years in the league. And he has the ability to extend plays, keep his eyes down the field, and deliver strikes outside of structure. And it just seems like that element of his game has completely regressed and disappeared. I mean, he's got Jedrick Wills and Jack Conklin, which, they were both hurt for chunks of the season this year, but like he has good protection now, but he's completely unwilling to trust that protection. And if it does break down to do anything, then put his eyes on the ground and beeline it for the sideline outside of structure. So like the big play element of Baker Mayfield, I mean, we know he has the big arm like that, and we know he's accurate down the field, but that accuracy dipped this year. And he's not using that big arm. He's just being very conservative. He's not, again, keeping those eyes down the field. If protection does break down, he's not taking designed shots down the field. I mean, it was just ugly. The back 10 of this year was just ugly. I don't know if there's any other way to put it, but he just looks completely broken, no confidence. So there has been no signs of progression. Again, the back half of last year was good. But that's kind of how it's been with Baker Mayfield, is we'll see stretches of really good play and then stretches of really poor play. And so that just makes me kind of think, okay, maybe he's just a volatile quarterback. Maybe he's in that same mold as Carson Wentz and Jameis Winston, where you're going to get some really, really good play out of these guys, but you're going to see some stretches of some really nasty volatility out of them as well. And so part of me just thinks, this is who Baker Mayfield is at this point.
I'm talking to Cory Kinnan. You can follow Cory on Twitter at Real Cory Kinnan. That's CoryKinnan. And the main reason I wanted to have Cory on this morning is I came across his charting project, 2022 quarterback charting project for the 2022 NFL draft class. And that can be found on riseindraft.com. That's RISEN draft.com. and I'll have the link in the podcast post up on the site as well too. Cory, how long have you been doing this? Where did the idea come from, to do this charting project? Is this the first year you have done it? And kind of give an overview of what the charting project is, the quarterbacks involved, and explain this WOT percentage as well too. I know that's a loaded. I got a cup of coffee here. I know it might take 15 minutes to answer all that, but have at it. Explain what you're doing here.
Yeah, so I started it last year with the 2020 class. So I have 2 years worth of data, and I've gone back and, I've charted. I'm trying to go back and find enough tape to chart some of those guys who've gone in the first 3 days over the past 4 or 5 years, going back to, Goff, Wentz, Dak Prescott, like that year. But finding old tape like that has been a really hard task. So I haven't been able to quite do that. So the data is still pretty young. So last year was really the first year I have full data. So I have those 2020 quarterbacks, or the 2021 quarterbacks, I'm sorry. The Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, those guys. And then I have 2020 on like the 2020 season on these guys and the 2021 season on the 22 class as well. So that's kind of what I have right now. And then again, some spotty data from, previous years. But basically I just feel like when I've been watching quarterbacks or like been reading breakdowns that other people do on NFL draft quarterbacks, it just always has kind of felt to me like accuracy has been this kind of feel thing, outside of completion percentage. People are just like, oh yeah, I think this guy's pretty accuracy because I can see him, throwing the ball well to this level of the field, things like that. But there's been no way to quantify that. And so that's kind of what I was hoping to do is how do I actually quantify accuracy? And so I set out to chart every single game for these guys. 2020 and 2021, I have charted every single game. And then what I also hope to do is I break it down by 4 levels of the field. So I break it down by accuracy outside the numbers at the intermediate level. So between 10 and 29 yards outside the numbers. I break it down by deep balls, 30 yards and more. I break it down by middle of the field, 10 and 29 yards within the hashes, or within the numbers. I'm sorry, not the hashes. And then under 10 yards. Those are kind of the 4 levels of the field that I look to kind of break down. And what I do is I break it is then I weight it based on what are the more challenging levels of the field to throw to. So if we're talking about the more challenging levels of the field to throw to, first, that's outside the numbers at the intermediate level. How can this quarterback drive the ball to those, those opposite hash throws, those outside the number throws along the boundary? How well can they hit on the mark there? And so I weight that the highest. And then secondly is, obviously the deep ball. Like how well can they hit the mark on the deep ball? How well can they connect on those splash plays that are really, if you follow analytics, are the EPA plays, the plays that are going to add a lot of EPA to their game. And then in middle of the field, under 10 yards are the lower 2 weights. So that's kind of what I hope to do is, not only is this quarterback accurate, but I'm hoping to elevate. This quarterback is more accurate towards the level of the fields that are going to provide more splash plays, that are going to provide those bigger NFL caliber throws. And so that's what I hope to do. So last year, I collected that data and found Justin Fields, most accurate guy in the class, especially those fields that mattered most. Trevor Lawrence, 2nd, Zach Wilson, 3rd, Trey Lance, 4th, Mac Jones, 5th. And then this year I've done the same thing. And this year's class is definitely not lived up to the hype of last year's class, as you've probably seen throughout. It's not a good class. So all 5 of the first round picks last year are more accurate than the top guys in this year's class, which is very, very they're very concerning about this year's class. But I also have that number for this year's class too, and I suspect with Ben Roethlisberger retiring, you're kind of gonna segue into digging into this year's class with that.
Right, exactly. Now, give us some. Go over the specifics again. What quantified as an outside the numbers throw?
Yeah, so between 10 and 29 yards outside the outermost part of the number. So if it throws even on the numbers, that counts as middle of the field. So outside the numbers between 10 and 29 yards. Okay,
and a deep ball would be that would be any deep ball past how many?
30 yards or plus. Yep, 30 plus.
Okay, yep. And even if it's outside the numbers, that would qualify as a deep ball.
Yep, as long as it's over 29 yards, it's a deep ball.
And the middle of the field classification?
10, 29 yards between on the numbers and in.
Okay. And the short game is anything shorter than
Anything
that.
under 10 yards. Yep.
Obviously there. Okay.
Yep.
And you said, as far as your charting project goes, the data that you have on the 2022 draft class, or the top ones in the draft class, I'm looking at the chart on the site right now here. Is that just 2021 numbers up there, or do you have another page that has the 2021 numbers in addition?
These are just the 2021 numbers. Yeah. So I have those like a historical spreadsheet on like just my personal drive. I can look to add that tab honestly to this site. That's actually a really good idea. But I can actually pull those numbers up for you as well. We can kind of go over those 2020 versus 2021 numbers for this 2022 class as well. For sure.
Okay, so it looks like, looking over at kind of the, let's see, I guess I need to click over here to the average accuracy by levels of the field, is kind of how you have these guys graded by areas of the field based on your formula. Do you define accuracy as, accurate when you see it? I mean, is it subjective, in other words, to you?
Yeah. I think with anything, there's a little bit of subjectivity to it. So, anytime like the ball is within the frame, a player, I give more leeway to deep balls. It's extremely difficult to put a ball right on the money down the field. If a wide receiver can get more than his fingertips on a deep ball, like I pretty much consider that on target. And again, you can kind of tell where a quarterback's taught to throw these balls. So if it's towards the boundary, he's taught to throw it high and away. So if the ball's high and away, I'm probably giving him credit for that, even if it is a little bit outside the frame of the wide receiver. The landmark is correct. So that kind of thing. Again, the size of windows matters as well. So if I'm looking over the middle of the field, a pass behind a receiver with a big window, I'm going to count on target. That same pass, however, if it's a tight window, is not going to be on target, because that ball isn't where it needs to be. So there is kind of leeway based on size of window as well, based on, what's on target, what's not. So, if a guy has a big window and he puts the ball a little bit behind the receiver, a little bit high of the receiver, that's fine. But again, if we're talking tight windows where defenders are kind of all over it, that ball needs to be where it needs to be. And if it's not, then I'm going to count that as off target. So there is a little bit of subjectivity to it in that regard.
All right, and I'm looking at kind of the results here outside the numbers, and probably not overly surprised. I've watched a lot of. Normally, I don't get to start tackling the draft stuff until after the NFL season ends, for obvious reasons, full time covering the Steelers and all like that. So that keeps me busy. But I was early in the process this year. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. Full disclosure. So not that I'm a Nevada fan, but I came across Romeo Doubs and Carson Strong back in the 2020 season and was impressed and kind of rode that Carson Strong train all throughout the season, just making sure I tuned in to watch. He really impressed me in 2020. I said, you know what, I'm going to watch this kid throughout the 2021 season. Obviously, knowing that Ben Roethlisberger, probably was going to call it quits after 2021. So I know the most about Carson Strong and Kenny Pickett, probably second out of all these kids in the class. I'm slowly starting to get caught up with everybody else and going through the tape on these guys. So outside the numbers, it seems like 75% is the number that you have on kind of the weighted number that you have, Carson Strong being the strongest outside the numbers, followed by Caleb Ellaby, Desmond Ritter, Sam Howell, Matt Corral, Kenny Pickett, Bailey Zapp, and then Malik Willis bringing up the rear there. So, were you surprised that Carson Strong was the top of this, top of the class when it came to outside the numbers, and just kind of go over your findings on the outside the numbers?
Yeah, so not really. I think Carson Strong's the most consistent passer in this class, the most polished passer in the class.
I agree.
So that didn't really surprise me. The thing with Carson Strong is his knee, for one. Right. He's had a few surgeries on that knee, and then two, teams are looking for guys who have the ability to extend plays a little bit, and he does lack that mobility in his lower body. So those are the kind of things with Strong, but not really. I wasn't shocked for Strong to kind of chart out as probably the most consistent passer based on 2020 year, 2021, adding those two together. So no, if we're going through the rest of outside the numbers, Caleb Ellaby, the Western Michigan quarterback, I will pound the table for and say this is the best bang for buck quarterback in this class. I mean, I think teams are going to reach on the Desmond Ritters, the Kenny Pickett's. They're going to reach on guys like that who I think any other year, these guys might not go before round 3. But Caleb Ellaby is probably going to go round 3, maybe into round 4. And based on how I think he is compared to these guys, which is, along the same lines, I think he's right up there with those guys. I think he's going to be best bang for buck. And again, he came in, honestly, right around that same mold as Carson Strong outside the numbers. So this guy can spin the ball. He can drive the ball outside the numbers. I really like him. I like his game a lot. But yeah, as far as outside the numbers, those were the only 2 guys who were even above average. So average accuracy from what I've found over the past, 2 years plus is about 68% outside the numbers. So Ellaby and Strong were the only guys who came in above average outside the numbers.
I have watched 0 on Caleb Ellaby to this point. I mean, just a couple of highlights right now. I think he's obviously an underclassman and all. How's his mobility?
Yeah, he can move. He's not a dynamic athlete the way Malik Willis is. He doesn't even have the mobility of a Sam Howell, Desmond Ritter. Those guys have kind of proven to be pure dual threats. Ellaby can extend, however. He has, he ran some zone reads at Western Michigan. He plays really well off platform as well. He makes some pretty exciting throws when he's forced to leave his base and throw off platform. So there's a lot to like there. Again, he's not going to be a dynamic athlete, but does bring an element of I can extend the play if protection breaks down. He has that element to his game.
All right, so you would view probably and Kenny Pickett being kind of in the bottom third there of this list and all, probably not. It just looks like on tape, and I see kind of segueing into the deep ball. Kenny Pickett is second behind Bailey Zapp, the kid out of the small school there. What is it, Western Kentucky? Is that
Western Kentucky?
Yeah. A bit surprising to see Pickett, not do well in the outside the number phase, but yet do okay on the deep ball. Now, preface that by saying I looked at a lot of Kenny Pickett's deep throw. He's not the guy that's going to throw the football down the field more than 50 yards, past the line of scrimmage. But he can throw that football, 40 to 43 yard range, I guess, and be okay. But even so, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of muster. And obviously a lot of the talk this week down at the Senior Bowl is the hand size and the double jointed thumb. And that's going to be, a lot of things he's going to have to show teams during the week down there in Mobile. So, kind of segue into the deep ball and kind of give your overview of Kenny Pickett as far as the deep ball goes versus the outside the numbers throws.
Yeah. So when we talk about arm talent, I think it's important to differentiate. I think arm talent has more to do with how well can this quarterback drive the football, outside the numbers, on a line, on a rope, into tight windows. I think every quarterback, for better or for worse, Bailey Zappi, I don't think has a great arm either. I think every quarterback, for better or for worse, can probably put the ball in the air 30 yards.
Right.
But how is it on a line? Can he get it there on a line? Can he drive the ball into tight windows? And that's where I kind of see, I think Pickett can throw the deep ball. I think he's got a pretty decent deep ball. Obviously, it's pretty accurate. It's near the top of the class. He's not putting it on a line, though. He's not driving those tight windows, which he has improved that element of his game over the past 4 previous years of his year. But Kenny Pickett, I think the same kind of goes for Mac Jones the year before, Joe Burrow the year before that. These guys aren't known for having big arms, but they throw with some pretty good anticipation. So they can put the ball in the spot. They can beat the receiver to the spot before the receiver has their head turned around and just know where the ball is supposed to go. And when you don't have a good arm, that's kind of how you have to thrive. It's just by anticipating those spots. And I think Pickett does a pretty good job of that. So that's why his number's kind of up there. It's the second best in the class. I'm sorry, Bailey Zappi has the charted most accurate deep ball in the class for me. But I think that's why Pickett has the ability to throw the ball deep. If you look at his over the middle, he's second over the middle of the field as well. And I think, again, that goes back to he can anticipate spots over the middle of the field. He can find holes in zone coverage, and he can put the ball where it needs to be to meet the receiver as the receiver gets his head around. And so I think that's why Pickett's risen. That's kind of how he wins. Deep ball, average is 63%. So he's a good 3% over that average in terms of deep ball accuracy. Again, there's only two guys in this class that are above average on their deep ball accuracy. That's Bailey Zappi and that's Kenny Pickett. And I think that's where he's made a lot of money this year, is because he can anticipate down the field and just kind of put the ball where it needs to be put. So I don't know if that answered your question. That was kind of a long-winded response, but yeah.
Well, does I just trying to differentiate between the outside the numbers, which is one where you really want to see the quarterback drive the football. Him being down in the bottom third of that, but yet up on the deep ball. Where what's the best way to describe the difference? You would kind of think if he's able to drive the ball outside the numbers, or isn't able to drive the football outside the numbers as consistency with accuracy. How is he able to drive the football down the field and have better accuracy that way?
Yeah. So again, outside the numbers, that's going to take a lot of drive, a lot of arm strength to really push the ball, opposite hash towards the boundary. It's going to take a lot of arm talent to kind of make those throws. And that's kind of the arm talent that he doesn't have. Because, when we're talking about those throws, we're talking about timing outs, like timing out routes, comeback routes towards the boundary, back shoulder fades, things like that, where he's really got to drive the football. And so for me, Pickett's arm is just average in terms of being able to drive the football. But again, deep down the field doesn't require a lot of times a lot of drive. You can kind of put those ones in the air a little bit. If you're anticipating the spot. So that's where I think Pickett can kind of get away with it, is, he can put those balls in the air, put a little more loft on those footballs and get them down the field. If he's got windows and if he's anticipating those windows. So I think, there's more leeway when you're operating deep down the field, because a lot of times, those are one-on-one shots. You are throwing towards the boundary. You're giving it, either my receiver's catching this or nobody is. So that gives Pickett a little more leeway to put a little more loft on the football, which he kind of has to do. So I see that as the main difference is, the deep ball doesn't really require the same amount of drive as a throw, that you got to really muster up some mustard to push it outside the numbers to your guy on those timing routes, on those back shoulders, those comebacks. So that's what I kind of see as the difference.
I obviously have seen Pickett complete a lot of the deeper balls down the field. Once again, not so much past like the 43-yard, air yard from the line of scrimmage. And I think his average depth of target, down the field is probably a little bit shorter probably than most of these guys in this class as far as, deep ball classification goes. But he does obviously, he had great receivers there at Pitt and all like that. And a lot of those were, I guess, quite a few were non-contested. It seemed like a lot of those big plays that he had. I was just surprised to see kind of him up there, deep ball compared to outside of numbers. But middle of the field looks like he's good too. Kenny is 76.83% rating here with only Caleb Ellaby ahead of him.
Yeah. So again, that's another area of the field where he really thrives is working over the middle of the field. Pitt's offense, if you watch Pitt's offense, really tries to exploit the seams down the hashes. So that makes a lot of sense to me, looking at how Pitt operates their offense and kind of where those numbers lie with Kenny Pickett. Again, some of those throws, require some drive to hit those tight windows over the middle of the field. But again, I think he has the ability to throw with some touch. So if he's throwing over second level defenders over the middle of the field, if he's kind of, working to throw his guys open, Pickett has the ability to do that as well over the middle of the field. And if you're looking at the NFL level, the middle of the field sometimes is where offenses make their money. So that might translate really, really well to the NFL. The way that Pickett operates, working, layering footballs, throwing with touch over the middle of the field and doing it in a manner that's accurate. So I think this is where, Kenny Pickett really thrives, where Kenny Pickett is really earning the trust of NFL teams, really catching the eye of NFL teams. It's kind of how he throws down the hashes, how he exploits the seams, how he can kind of throw with touch and layer throws over the second level defenders, things like that. It's kind of the strong point of Kenny Pickett's game, in my opinion.
So you're not overly concerned about the whole hand size argument and double jointed thumb with him and Kenny two gloves and all like that. I mean, he obviously played in some inclement weather, playing for Pitt and looked pretty good, and especially in that game against North Carolina with all that slop and all on top of it. So is the takeaway that at least with the 2021 numbers is you're not concerned about Pickett's arm strength or the size of his hands?
Not really, to be honest. Because I mean, Joe Burrow has similar hand size.
Right.
Trey Lance has under nine inch hands. He went third overall last year. So I think hand size can be a little bit overblown. Sure, you might be prone to a few more fumbles. It is going to be interesting to see how, again, this week at Mobile, using an NFL-sized football, though, how well can he grip and how well can he drive an NFL football? I think that's where it's going to really come down to. I mean, Joe Burrow proved that, he can still grip and kind of drive an NFL football. Trey Lance, arm talent's not an issue at all. He's got a massive arm, a beautiful arm. So that's going to be how it kind of translates to the NFLs. Yeah, his hands are small. That doesn't always mean something, but how well, with a bigger football, an NFL football, how does that impact his ability to drive, to grip and drive an NFL football? So that's something to keep an eye on with hand size. But for the most part, I think hand size is kind of an overblown metric.
With Sam Howell, obviously, boy, he can rip it down the field. I mean, he you can really see him put that ball out there and on a rope too. But his deep ball accuracy of the quarterbacks that you charted and all, second. We're tied with Caleb Allenby for second to last year at 50% there. What was his number? A lot has been made that Sam Howell, lost some of his weapons there at North Carolina. What was his? Do you have his deep ball percentage, his score from 2020?
We're talking about Sam Howell here?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. So his overall weighted on target percentage was 71.87, which is 6% higher than it was this year. So his accuracy did take a bit of a hit, and that's because his deep ball accuracy took a bit of a hit as well. With Sam Howell, it's a volume thing too. If you kind of look at it, they asked Sam Howell to throw a ton of deep balls. That's all North Carolina does, is kind of stretch the field vertically for the most part. But he was only on target on 50% of his deep balls this year, as opposed to 65 last year.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, his deep ball percentage did go down a little bit. But again, he took 36 chances down the field this year, which is tied for the most with Bailey Zappi in this class. So, but 18 of 36 on target wise for Sam Howell. So his accuracy did take a 6% dip this year. Yeah. So it is what it is with Sam Howell, but that's not maybe something to be concerned with. But at the same time, you got to look at kind of the talent around him. Sam Howell didn't have any protection around him. Sam Howell graduated 2 of his top receivers and 2 of his top running backs last year. So those things do matter to an extent. But it is kind of concerning that big of a drop off happened with his deep ball from one year to the next.
Malik Willis is also probably easily probably the most athletic in this class, but also probably the rawest of them all, the one that probably you would probably want to sit on the bench for a year if you could manage to do it with him, just the mechanics and everything. Well, he's got an arm and he can sling it. But a lot of times I'm not sure he knows, he can throw, the saying this past year with Dwayne Haskins was, Ben Roethlisberger said that Dwayne Haskins can throw a football through a car wash and it not get wet. But I think the only problem with that is nobody knows where that ball's going when it goes through the car wash. Is that kind of an analogy you use with Malik Willis? Is got a heck of an arm, but really the mechanics and the accuracy are the biggest concerns when it comes to him?
Yeah, I mean, I like Malik Willis's upper body mechanics. I think his footwork can get a lot of sloppy, especially when he feels pressure. But I like his arm speed. I like the way he kind of operates his upper body. And again, that arm talent is there. That lower body mobility and talent is there. But again, from 2020 to 2021, there's 2 quarterbacks in this class that have been below average in terms of weighted on target percentage, in terms of accuracy in both years. Only 2 in this class, and those are Malik Willis and Desmond Ritter. So his accuracy is definitely concerning. Definitely concerning. He started off the year really hot. I really like some of the early stuff that Malik Willis did, but his play really dropped off. He went from playing really well to throwing multiple picks against Louisiana Monroe, North Texas. I mean, the one really big game he had was Ole Miss, and that tape is not flattering at all either. And Army, these are teams that he should be able to, as a top prospect, should be able to beat up against for better or for worse. But teams that he seemed to struggle against, not really understand what he's recognizing. So I think for Malik Willis, that accuracy is a concern. If his upper body mechanics are good, if he fixes his lower body mechanics, will he see an uptick in accuracy? The answer could be very well yes. But for me, with Malik Willis, it's more of, what's going on between the ears, what's going on with the eyes. Liberty runs a very RPO based, very pedestrian high school level offense. And he doesn't seem to have a good grip on the concepts that he's running from that offense. So for me, yeah, mechanics, lower body, how do we fix that up? But man, how steep of the learning curve is it going to be for Malik Willis to get where he needs to be be able to read, understand NFL caliber defensive concepts, know where his eyes need to be? Can he get to his second reads against those caliber defensive concepts? Does he know what he's looking at pre-snap? I think that's going to be where his biggest learning curve is.
Would you say the smartest of the quarterbacks that you looked at here, the 8 in total, that Carson Strong from an X's and O's standpoint, just a football mind, is probably tops? And would Malik Willis be the last one on the list?
In terms of accuracy, yeah, Malik Willis is the bottom guy.
Just from a football IQ standpoint.
Yeah. I would also put him probably the bottom of the list. Him and Ritter both have some struggles with getting their eyes in the right spot. But the thing with Ritter, though, is he's actually running some NFL concepts. He actually has some pre-snap workload to his game, where Willis doesn't. And so that makes it even more concerning. So from an IQ perspective, from an eye perspective, getting his eyes in the right space on an acumen perspective, I think Willis has a pretty steep curve ahead of him.
What kind of preconceived, and obviously did you just start charting this class, their last year tape and this year's tape after this season, or had you already had the 2021 or 2020 tape in the can before you started breaking down the 2021 tape?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that question for me?
Yeah, I wanted to. Did you break down all of their tape 2020 and 2021 basically in the same period, or did you already have 2020 tape charted before getting before sitting down this year and doing? What I'm wondering is, did you have kind of any preconceived notions on these quarterbacks? While looking at their tape. In other words, did you already have the old tape in the can, and were you surprised by anything, or was all this done kind of in one kind of like 6-month setting here? So you were kind of constantly in the tape and really didn't have any of the previous season on your mind, to kind of influence you there.
So I charted their 2020 tapes over the summer. So when I was doing my summer scouting and really breaking down my summer work is when I charted their 2020 tape. And then so their 2021 tape, I kind of did the best I could to keep up with it weekly. So as the weeks went on, kind of just do it as it rolled in. And then, I naturally, I'm charting, 7 guys, but I was doing more than that based on guys who didn't end up declaring things like that as well. So I fell behind. So, at the back end, I might've been doing 5 games at a time to kind of catch up at the end of the year. But no, I did have that kind of preconceived notion coming into the year of like, okay, which of these quarterbacks were accurate a year ago? And which of these quarterbacks, have a long way to go coming into the year. And for the most part, that kind of added up. The one quarterback who did take that massive leap was Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett's weighted on target percentage was in the 50s.
Wow.
Coming into the season based off of his 2020 tape, and it jumped up to 68% this year. Again, that's nowhere near, Justin Fields was at 83%. Trevor Lawrence was at 82%. Zach Wilson's at 76%. And then Trey Lance, Mac Jones were around 70%. So again, still below those guys. But I mean, to take a jump like Pickett saw this year isn't something to turn your back on. So, but again, he's really the only guy that didn't really match up. I mean, we saw some guys fall off a cliff. I mean, Spencer Rattler was the most accurate quarterback I charted coming into the season. He fell off this year. So maybe he'll pick back up at South Carolina this year. But if we're looking at consistency, it was pretty consistent year in and year out. Sam Howell was at average or above average both years. Again, he was right at average this year, where he was pretty high above average last year. But really, Carson Strong and Caleb Ellaby were the only 2 names who were above average both years.
And Matt Corral, how would you kind of characterize his last couple of seasons?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny place to be where in my opinion, I prefer his 2020 tape where he had 2 games where he threw 4 picks to his 2021 tape. I really thought his 2021 tape kind of really dropped off a cliff, really fell off a cliff. I mean, his weighted on target percentage dropped from he was the second most accurate charted guy from a year ago at 73.25% weighted on target percentage to he dropped to 62% this year. So he dropped way off a cliff. Which is very concerning, again, because we're talking about that Ole Miss, that Lane Kiffin offense that's also very RPO heavy, like very vertically oriented, not a lot of NFL concepts in Lane Kiffin's offense. So we're not only talking about, his accuracy dropped off, but his play, and again, a very quarterback friendly, a very RPO heavy, very easy offense, to run. But his eyes, he's kind of laid over the middle a lot. His eyes kind of drop off. I mean, he has a nice arm. He's got some mobility. He's got some nice tools. But again, I think the learning curve for him is going to be a little bit steep as well. Just based on, especially down the stretch this year. Those last 5 games for Corral are very concerning based on what he's seeing and how late he is to kind of react to what he's seeing. I mean, he was a lot of people's quarterback ones at the midseason point, even coming into the season. And man, I don't know if I'm going to have a day 2 grade on him. That's just kind of where it's at with him now. Just because I truly don't like what I'm seeing with his eyes, and his tools aren't the high end tools that, we see on a Malik Willis. So where Malik Willis's tools can kind of float his grade. Yeah. Matt Corral has mobility. Matt Corral has a nice arm, but I don't know if they're the caliber to kind of float a grade where his eyes are kind of going to suffer and kind of tank his grade a little bit for me.
All right, so your final total WOT percentage that you have for this past season is Bailey Zappi first at 70.81, and then the list goes Carson Strong, Caleb Ellaby, Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell, Desmond Ritter, Matt Corral, and then Malik Willis at the bottom right there. What would a 2-year snapshot? Do you have kind of a 2-year snapshot of these past 2 seasons of where those quarterbacks rank?
Yeah. So again, if we go back to 2020 tape, Matt Corral and Sam Howell were both over 70%. This year, neither of them were over 70%. Again, Sam Howell was still at that average mark where Matt Corral dropped pretty far below it. But those two saw a significant drop where Carson Strong, Caleb Ellaby were at 68, 67, and they both jumped up to 70, 69. So, I mean, that's pretty consistent. We saw a little bit of an increase to their weighted on target percentage. But it's still, those are the only 2 guys that were pretty far above average that kind of stand out to me as in terms of accuracy are Strong and Ellaby. Desmond Ritter was the least accurate quarterback I charted last year at 55%. So, jumping up from 55 to 64%, he almost is at average. In Mobile, he's really struggling to hit his spots, apparently. I'm in the process of breaking it down now, and apparently he's all over the map with his accuracy. So that kind of lines up with kind of how volatile of a passer he is, how sporadic and inaccurate of a passer he is. So that kind of lines up because, again, he was the least accurate guy I charted. Malik Willis was at 61.87% last year, dropped to 58.33% this year. But for the most part, guys were consistent outside of Corral, who dropped way off, outside of Pickett, who took a big leap. The other guys, Ritter and Willis, were below average accuracy both years. Howell was average or above both years. Strong and Ellaby were above average both years. So for the most part, outside of Corral and Pickett, what I saw in 2020 kind of carried over to 2021, for better or for worse.
All right. So with the analytics and the eye test, I mean, man, you've seen you've charted some throws, brother. I wish I had the time. You're doing the kind of stuff that I would do if I didn't have to manage the site day in and day out. I enjoy charting throws and all like that, and the kind of work that you're doing. It's just the time aspect when you're trying to run a site full time gets in the way. Obviously, but from the tape and the analytics from where you sit right now here at the Senior Bowl time, how would you personally rank these 8 quarterbacks right now?
Yeah, so I'm working through that at this point. I've got 5 of them ranked, so I'm still trying to finalize Corral. I still need to finalize Pickett, and I still need to finalize Zappy. But I have a pretty good idea of where they'll.
I have a thing where I only hold you to it if you're wrong. Okay. So,
okay, that sounds good.
No, and I understand you still, but just kind of the gut feel from where you have, and I understand you still got work to do on a few of them. But from maybe where you are, if you were hard pressed to put up a ranking right now, what would that kind of look like?
Yeah. So right now, I will say, Sam Howell, probably that top guy for me. Just a combination of tools. Again, his accuracy is at least average.
Do you like his ability to extend plays? Do you like his ability to extend plays? You don't see much of it though, right? I mean, there's not a lot of those kind of Mahomes, and that's a high bar, obviously. But in today's NFL, I mean, I have yet to come across a lot of plays with him extending the play.
Yeah, so I mean, this year for sure, his uptick with his feet took a jump. So he rushed for over 800 yards this year, which was incredible for me to look that up and be like, oh my gosh, because I saw it on tape. So that did take a jump for him. I do think he has that ability to extend plays and kind of work outside of structure with his legs. And that's a big thing for me. So I mean, I don't think I'm going to have anything higher than a mid to low second round grade on any of these guys anyway. None of these guys are going to be pushed in the first round. So I do have a low second round grade on Howell. But I think that might be the highest grade that I give. So Howell's number 1 for me. I would put him up there. Again, I think Howell drives the ball over the middle of the field outside the numbers. He drives the ball pretty well. He's got a decent deep ball. I mean, again, it took a little bit of drop in accuracy this year, but I think for better or for worse, again, Howell runs a pretty RPO heavy based, not a lot on his plate pre-snap, but he's at least getting his eyes in the right place. And I think he's at least operating in a timely manner. So that goes a long way for me. So I'm going to put Howell at 1, Carson Strong 2. Again, best pure passer in the class is Carson Strong. That lack of mobility really sucks I just wish he had it,
Yeah, I do too. Look, the way I characterize Carson Strong, and I've watched he's the one guy that I've watched every game over the last 2 years on, but as much as I like him, just the mobility's not there. Teams are either going to love him or they're just going to pull him off the board, I think, if they think mobility and extending the play. Either they think they can kind of make a Tom Brady out of him or they can't there. So I definitely see this concerns. I think Carson Strong's the best pure passer in this class, but the whole mobility thing is going to be tough for several teams. But I certainly understand you have him ranked number 2.
Yeah, so that's a big thing. It's a big thing. Like you can't get around it. I mean, if we take a look at the guys who have thrived with a lack of mobility, we're talking about Peyton Manning. We're talking about Tom Brady. Like that's a steep comp to make for a guy like Carson Strong. Like that's a steep comp. The thing like Carson Strong does really well is he operates on time really well. He does have a pre-snap workload. So he does have the ability to anticipate, know where his guys are going to be. He has the ability to work through his progressions at a very high rate. So I really like Carson Strong, the quarterback. I really like Carson Strong, the passer. It's just really hard to overlook that lack of mobility. Right. So we're talking about a guy, what you really want out of your quarterback is, can this guy provide me some margin for error if protection breaks down? And I don't know if he can. So I struggle to see how he could be in any other tier than the Kirk Cousins, than the Derek Carrs. I think Derek Carr can actually do a little bit better, but like those guys that really need things to be perfect around them. The Jimmy Garoppolo's, he's got a much better arm than Jimmy Garoppolo, obviously, but like the Baker Mayfields, kind of those guys who like, if the things aren't around them aren't perfect, it's kind of breaking down. And that's kind of what I think from Carson Strong. Again, the way that he throws with anticipation, the way that he knows what he's looking at, that he can work through his progressions, alleviates a lot of that lack of mobility. I think he works the pocket at an extremely high level. So I really like that. I think he can slide, he can step up, work the pocket at a really high level. But if the pocket collapses, and it's going to at the NFL pretty often. I mean, when you're facing NFL talent pass rushers, like, can you overcome that?
Right, especially in Pittsburgh, with the way that line is right now. Would I imagine that Kenny Pickett would be 3rd on your list right now?
Probably. He's one of the guys I need to finalize. Him and Malik Willis, I think, are going to be kind of close. I mean, at a certain point, I draw a line between, and I think, second, third round is that line. Like, okay, at what point do I just start taking dart throws on uber talented quarterbacks and hoping to fix the rest over guys who, are kind of capped out physically, but can kind of play the quarterback position. And I think Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis is kind of going to be that line for me. So I could have Malik Willis higher. I could have Kenny Pickett higher. Pickett's still one that I'm working to finalize just because, again, would I prefer a quarterback who can get his eyes in the right spot, but is kind of capped out with his play physically, or would I prefer to take a chance? If I am taking a dart throw, would I take one on a more talented quarterback? I think Pickett's going to end up getting overdrafted in the first round, just kind of based on the weak class and based on his 2021 season. So, I mean, Pickett's going to get drafted pretty high, but that's kind of the line I walk between Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett.
And you, then no way would you, how would they rank after? So you would have, it sounds like it would be what, Sam Howell, Carson Strong, Kenny Pickett, and Malik Willis are right there together. How would the rest rank out?
Yeah, so then I'm going to go to Caleb Ellaby. I'm going to take Caleb Ellaby over Desmond Ritter. Again, if I'm taking a chance on guys, I want to take a chance on the guy with the arm that can drive the football. I think Desmond Ritter's arm is pretty, it's above average, but if we're talking about league average, he's probably sitting at league average. A player that Desmond Ritter really reminds me of is Ryan Tannehill, just kind of the skill set that Ryan Tannehill has. So I think the big arm people tend to talk about with Ritter, I don't see a big arm with Ritter. I see a pretty NFL average arm with Ritter. And then again, that mixed with the eyes, that mixed with the accuracy, really, it gives me hesitation with Desmond Ritter. So that's going to elevate Caleb Ellaby above him for me. Ellaby has a bigger arm. Ellaby's far more accurate. Again, Ellaby operated one of those RPO heavy offenses where he doesn't have a lot on his plate pre-snap. So again, he's going to have a bit of a steep learning curve in terms of learning an NFL offense, in terms of deciphering NFL defenses. But again, kind of along the same lines of Howell, even though he is in that RPO heavy based offense where he doesn't have a lot of pre-snap work to do, I can at least count on Ellaby to get his eyes in the right spot. So Ellaby is going to be that guy next for me. So probably around that fifth quarterback for me is going to be Caleb Ellaby from Western Michigan.
And then how would just give a loose ranking on the rest of the guys there?
Yeah, then it's going to be Ritter and then going to be Zappy for me to close it out there.
And then
Corral. I got Corral too. Corral and Ritter. We'll see how I finalize Corral. Again, I really don't like Corral's tape at the back end of the season. So, Corral might be below Ritter for me. I just don't get it. Why he fell off the way he did, what was going on with his eyes. He's going to have a really hard time transitioning to an NFL offense as well. So him and Ritter are going to be kind of right there in that next tier. And then Zappy is going to be that guy that's kind of at the bottom. I like a lot of what Zappy does with, his anticipation as well, with his accuracy, but his arm is just, if I could give maybe a comp to Bailey Zappy, it's like, Case Keenum lit it up at Houston in college. Case Keenum kind of operated that air raid and set some pretty good numbers, pretty good records for Houston. But obviously Case Keenum doesn't have an NFL arm. I think Case Keenum is a pretty good backup, pretty good spot starter. And that's kind of what I see for the future of Bailey Zappy. So Bailey Zappy is that guy, that last guy for me.
We've seen quarterbacks overdrafted several times over the years. I'm 53 years old. I've seen a lot in my time now, and obviously I think there are going to be at least two or three quarterbacks go in the first round this year that probably, as you stated, I think from what I'm gathering, the highest grade that you probably give is like a second round grade in this one. Would you, how many of these quarterbacks do you think will end up going in the first round, and who are they? I would guess that you would have Howell, Pickett, and maybe Malik Willis or Strong going in the first round.
I would say probably 3, maybe 4. So I think Malik Willis somebody's going to take a chance on those tools. For better or for worse, I think somebody's going to take a chance on the tools. People are obsessed with finding the next Josh Allen, which I think is a futile task, because if you do that, you're going to end up with a Deshaun Kaiser more often than not. But because I think Josh Allen is an outlier, a unicorn, but I think the draw with his tools are going to get him drafted in the first round. I think Sam Howell probably still goes first round. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if Sam Howell's the first one off the board.
Wow.
I think his name still carries some weight. And I think just kind of some of the things he did, there's some good things on his tape still, even if his numbers don't line up. I really like Sam Howell's tape. So I think Sam Howell goes first round, and then Kenny Pickett are the 3 that I would say, yes, these guys absolutely go first round. I think we could see maybe Desmond Ritter still go first round, which I think is just, man, that's a gamble. That's a huge risk to take a Desmond Ritter in the first round. But again, it's a weak class, and there's a lot of teams who need a quarterback. Like we're looking at maybe 10 teams that are going to be looking at new quarterbacks this offseason. So we might see some of those guys get elevated. So 3 to 4, I think, is kind of the sweet spot on quarterbacks.
Mike Tomlin's been preaching quarterback mobility all year, and I'm not totally convinced they will take a quarterback in the first round, but at the same, I wouldn't bet my house against it. Knowing what you know about these quarterbacks and knowing that Mike Tomlin likes to have some mobility, and they've tried to at least quantify it, say, look, not a guy that has to be a Lamar Jackson, because who is? Or a guy that say a Patrick Mahomes and all, but has to have some level of mobility, be able to move in the pocket, be able to use his legs a little bit. Would you kind of, if it was to be a first round quarterback for the Steelers this year, would you kind of narrow that list down to Kenny Pickett and Sam Howell?
And Malik Willis. I would put Malik Willis on there too. I think that they'll probably have some interest in Malik Willis, but those 3 would probably be the 3 to kind of keep an eye on.
All righty. Who would you, as a Browns fan, who scares you the most of landing in Pittsburgh?
That's a good question. So I mean, the thought of Malik Willis developing into an accurate passer scares the crap out of me, because, that would be another highly talented, highly skilled quarterback in the division. I mean, none of them are overly like, ooh, I'm scared, but I think Howell's probably the one who's most ready to play day one, take on a workload day one. So I would say maybe Howell, but I think the fear of what Malik Willis could become might become more pressing.
You obviously watch a lot of Baker Mayfield. What about the comparison, the easy comp to Sam Howell is Baker Mayfield? True or false? And where is he better? Where is he worse?
Maybe college Baker Mayfield.
Okay.
Sam Howell, I think his eyes are better than Baker's are right now. Sam Howell handles pressure a lot better than Baker Mayfield does at this current juncture. Baker really collapses under pressure at this point. Again, I think his confidence is shattered. I think Baker's got a bigger arm for sure. Accuracy is probably about a wash. Howell's probably a little bit better with his legs. So I get the comp. So that's kind of how I'd split it up. Howell, better lower body, better eyes, better under pressure. Baker's got the bigger arm. When Baker is sound, Baker's more accurate, but more often than not, he hasn't been sound. So I'll call the accuracy a wash.
Man, I wish I could download what's in your head from the tape. I will get through that point. I'll watch a lot more tape moving forward here for sure, now that I have more time during the off season here. But man, it's been absolutely great. Tell the people what all you do, where they can find you, what all you do.
Yeah. So again, SI Browns Digest is kind of where I frequent writing for Browns content. TheAnalyst.com. I do, from some X's and O's to quarterback breakdowns for The Analyst. So that's another site that I write a lot for. And then riseanddraft.com is where my quarterback charting project is. I'm also looking to release a draft guide this year. So I'm kind of pounding out some scouting reports to hopefully get a draft guide released.
Well, let me know when you get that together, and I'll pump it up, pump it out to our people and all like that. Cory, if you had another 2 hours, I certainly would use it up. But I know you got a family and all like that. And I came across your stuff a couple of weeks ago and all like that. Been waiting for a time to maybe have you on. Why don't we maybe make a plan right before the draft to maybe have you on the show again and kind of finalize some things. What you finalize some thoughts that you have on this draft class and all. But man, amazing work that you've done, and all the charts are up there on riseanddraft.com. So make sure you get by and check that as well too. Cory, man, I appreciate your time spending an hour with me today during Senior Bowl week. And once again, thanks for being on the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
Okay. Wow. How'd you like that? A very Steelers biased opinion from a guy that's charted all of those games. And once again, if you get a chance, make sure you stop by riseanddraft.com and follow some of the links, and you should be able to find the 2022 quarterback charting project that he has. And man, if you click through there, you can find all the individual game charting of the passes that he did. Just a wealth of information that Cory has on that site, and it really drew me to that there. And once again, we look to maybe have Cory on at a later date there, closer to the draft, and kind of go over this quarterback class again here. I've got a lot of tape to watch still, and I got to go back and watch some Sam Howell stuff and see some of those out of structure throws of his, and obviously some more work to be done on Kenny Pickett as well too, and Malik Willis on top of that. So I hope you enjoyed that. There's a lot of him, and not so much of me, which probably makes this show better on top of it there. So we'll see what we can get together for maybe a Friday show. And in the meantime, if you like what we do, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. You can follow Alex Kozora, obviously, on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Cory, you can follow him at Real Cory Kinnan, Kinnan, on Twitter as well too. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button upper right navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, I got the ad-free versions available as well for you people that want to subscribe, with no ads to the site there. So in the meantime, hope you enjoyed the show today. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.